I'm going to venture into a couple other areas that are actually, if you probably search this on the internet forever, you're never going to find it. And I'm going to say what I'm going to state kind of slowly and carefully, so bear with me on this because I want to state things carefully because some of this I'll just call it experimental. Although I've read for a number of years some of these experimental things seem to work pretty well, but I can't see any harm done to that in them anyway, so I don't see how it could actually harm any person in any way. And if there are precautions, I'm going to go ahead and state what they are. I don't want to say how much of what I've done on this and what results I've gotten or anything like that, or if it's been done on other people, if they got results. I might allude to some of that. But pay attention to this because actually you may not ever find this information on the internet anywhere unless you really dig. I don't think you'll find it on YouTube anywhere anyway at all. Now, I wanted to preface this with a lot of people heard about a few people, at least the people that heard about Dr. Bob Beck's PhD, the protocol he designed for fighting viruses and different things. It really is based upon a patent. This part is common knowledge, but I want to display the patent here. This was an actual patent, not a patent application. It's a granted patent. U.S. Patent 5139684, dated August 18th, 1992. It was researched by Dr. Cayley and Lyman. Dr. Cayley and Lyman. The research for the patent was done in the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York City, during 90 and 91. And I'll just state what the patent says. It's highlighted here, and it's basically an appropriate electrical field strength to provide electrical current flow through the blood or other bodily fluids at a magnitude that is biologically compatible. In other words, it does not hurt the blood or the bodily fluids, but is sufficient to render the bacteria, viruses, and or fungi ineffective to infect normal healthy cells while maintaining the biological usefulness of the blood or other bodily fluids. Now, in practice, it actually will lengthen the life of white blood cells. Okay? Doesn't state it in a patent. I'm not going to provide references. You could take that with a grain of salt or whatever. But because this is actually in the realm of non-conventional type of medicine, but I did want to point out and preface this that there is a U.S. patent on this. This is what Dr. Beck, Dr. Robert Beck, PhD, not an MD, PhD, he used to cure himself of something, or so he claimed, and he went around and started teaching the world about it. Now, I'm going to get on to some other things that are, and this is something that has been on the internet. It's actually posted about the Beck protocol. I'm going to get on with some other things that will be very unique, and just want to be careful on how I state it, but some people might find this beyond beneficial, unbelievable, and I'm not even touching the surface in this particular video, but I might do more later. This is a patent application, okay? U.S. patent application 2009-011-7513. I don't know. I don't think this has actually been granted yet. It's an application, but I've been reading it for a number of years. Applications using direct current electricity to go against maladies. Now, I want to caution about this direct current electricity. I have seen things on the internet where they're talking about 9-volt batteries. That is incorrect. That is way too high. That is way, way too high. And I don't know if that's disinformation or they're throwing garbage out there. And to me, it probably might be. It might be deliberately thrown out there by people who want people thrown off track. It's not harmful to your person, 9 volts. Now, there's an exception. Never ever use DC by the brain. That's bad. Never. Do not use DC voltage by the brain, especially 9 volts. And I've seen garbage out there saying to do that. That is wrong. And as a general rule, usually if you can feel it, it's too high voltage. Now, in some cases where you feel a little bit of voltage going against a infection, the higher voltages are for infections. But when I'm talking higher voltages, that's 3 to 5 volts. 3, 4, or 5 volts. Below 6. Below 6. 3.5 volts is plenty. So, now this thing is not actually talking about general infections, this patent application. It's talking about oral infections and defects. It says a method and apparatus for the concurrent treatment of multiple oral diseases and defects while promoting general oral hygiene utilizing direct current electricity. Basically, it states it right here. The benefits include killing microbes, increasing oral vasodilation, improving oral blood circulation. Now, I found that, like from my readings anyway, that you always use extremely low voltage. Actually, when I was even talking about the 9-volt voltage, obviously that's not lethal, but that is way too high for against oral maladies. It's about 3 volts approximately. Now, the way we'd use this, and the way it's being experimented with, I'll put it that way, is the way it's being experimented with. What it is like, say this is a picture of a tooth, and say this particular tooth here, the first molar, has a infection, the tooth is infected, or the gum is infected. What would happen is you would put one side of the electricity on one side of the tooth, and either put it on the other side of the tooth or the other side of the mouth, and it would go through, the electricity would go through, and that's about 3.5 volts. That's all you need. Plain DC electricity. That's all it is. Now, the way you would apply that is you wouldn't use a bare wire, obviously. You would not use a bare wire. You would take a bare wire and wrap it in cloth, or and wet the cloth with tap water. So you would wrap the cloth, like a little bit of cloth around the wire, and use an elastic band to hold it in place, wet it, and you would hold this on one side of the mouth and the other side of the mouth here, and the electricity could be used. This is experimental, but you see the patent application. I'm just trying to state how it's working in practice, or what they're experimenting with. But I heard some, well, I'll state here, I heard some pretty good feedback. So, astounding feedback, actually. But what happens is the low DC current will destroy. In other words, obviously 3.5 volts is not going to hurt your human cells. Obviously, it's very low voltage, but it's enough to knock out a lot of pathogens, even ones deep inside the tooth, deep inside the gums, that are very difficult to treat. And when you look at the size of a virus compared to the size of a normal healthy cell, a normal healthy cell almost looks like a skyscraper compared to an ant. And a bacteria might look like a truck compared to a skyscraper. It's not a perfect comparison, but the viri are extremely tiny compared to normal human cells. And actually, there's a little theory out there that white blood cells kill pathogens not just by a chemical reaction, but by an electrical reaction. This is why it seems that this types of currents that are used to fight maladies seem to work. They're like nothing compared to a human cell. It doesn't affect them, but if you get the right level, that's why it's going to be very, very low. Low seems to work better. Now, with the I'm going to ad lib on a little bit, sidetrack on something. With the regeneration of scar tissue, or regeneration of nerve endings and different things like that. That's not what this patent is about. I just discussed, but I want to interject this in here. You're using extremely low electricity. You are using a nanoamp. Actually, if you look at the work of Dr. Robert Otto Becker, MD, somebody different, he used a device to regenerate tissue using a platinum electrode, negative current platinum electrode with a nanoamp, and then it seemed that the DNA would able to cause cells to replicate, and it would grow back whatever was there that was destroyed. Work that was actually done in the 70s. So some of this stuff's been around a long time. I don't know exactly. It seems to be suppressed. Now, in the case of this, I would almost think, say for instance, this patent application is all legit. Everything works on it, as to say it works as they state. Some of the feedback I've seen seems to indicate it does very well. Like, in other words, people have experimented with using it against a tooth that was rotting out underneath the cap, and usually in that case you're pretty much screwed, right? Because you can't really get to the tooth underneath the cap, but the DC voltage seems to permeate the tooth, so it gets to the bacteria that's rotting the tooth underneath the cap. And there's some claims out there that they've done very well using this method, but consider the cost. Consider the cost. You know, actually, I envision a world that, you know, if we lived in a real free world, like, but, you know, people could take the bull by the horns and just go with this stuff. We can actually have it where, you know, if you want to have in your easy chair, you know, various microelectrical currents to fight disease, you can have them go through your wrists, you know, automatically as a feature, or it could be on an exercise machine when you're holding bars that they automatically go through to fight disease, or restore the convert free radicals into normal cells. Various currents do various things, and theoretically, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, people could possibly live forever getting into the right frequencies, the right nutrition, and using microelectricity to fight disease and to regenerate cells. People could possibly live forever in this body. I don't know. I don't really think that's totally a theory. Right now, the science is kind of crude because it's suppressed. And, you know, this is my beef with the medical community. It's almost like, you know, if I told, say for instance, this DC voltage was a simple way to keep teeth from being infected and gums from being infected at any, if you used it on a daily basis or whatever. Say it was, assume it was. Dentists would hate this because it would put them out of business, right? It would put them out of their conventional business, but you know, there's always other business out there. There's always life enhancement business. You know, just raise the bar higher, where people, maybe you go into the business where you want people to be extending life to 1,000 years, no problem, and still being like brand new. So, you know, I think it's the myopic attitude of the medical community that is the worst going. So I don't like them, to tell you the truth, and I generally don't like people that think like that. But I want to get on to something else. This is a place I ordered from several times. Discussed it before. I think one of the most practical units to buy, if you buy just one single unit out of here, would be to get this DC microelectrical combination device. And I have this one, but I also have, it comes with, I also have the add-on for the rechargeable batteries, AC, and the AC adapter. The AC adapter is only used to recharge the batteries, and actually I replaced these batteries with the souped up ones that are 9.6 volts, so it's even, you know, it can last a long time on a single charge, even past the original design, which seems to last a long time. Now, what this device is actually two devices in one, but it can have a multiple of the uses. It has the Beck current. In other words, if you flip the switch to ME up here, that means it's microelectricity. That's the Beck current, and that is this patent right here. That's using that patent for treating blood or treating infections and stuff. And it is a full-powered unit that you can actually use pads to treat infections. And I would like to demonstrate some of this, but then if I don't know how much I should go into this because it's unconventional medicine. But I just want to point out again, there's an actual real patent as far as the Beck current. I call it the Beck current. That is actually filed and proven that it works in a petri dish, and it does work in the blood. So as far as the blood goes. Now, this one I pointed out before is actually a patent application, but I've seen a number of things that are using methods using direct current electricity for oral maladies and oral diseases and oral problems with tooth decay and gum disease, and they seem to work very well. Now, this device also has the DC. Now, he's using it here for using it against cancerous tumors as they experimented with in China. But you can also use this DC for oral maladies. Just as I was stating, you could put one electrode on each side of where the mouth is, inside the mouth, and you have an adjustment knob and just turn it up a little bit. You don't have to feel any pain or anything like that. It's just where it has a little bit of electricity, and sometimes that is enough to help knock out a lot of bad pathogens and bad microbes using the DC side. And actually you can use the option of using the other side, microelectricity, which is the patent that actually is patented. Now, in the case of using which one you use, it turns out that the DC actually in a lot of cases is more effective against more different ailments and more different different maladies and things like that. Maybe not ailments, but against more different types of maladies and microbes. But the thing is, if you were to use this in the fashion that using the DC voltage to treat the entire blood's body, you would not want to do that very long. You would want to do that for no more than a month, for maybe a maximum of a half an hour to an hour a day, because it actually will it's actually too strong for the blood. But in some cases where the actual patented current doesn't work, this one I'm referring to, which is called ME, microelectricity, that's the microelectricity side of the unit, where they just flip the switch and they go to ME, that's using the patent. That usually works in a lot of situations to cleanse the blood of the various types of pathogens. But if something can't be cleansed, use the DC side. Just don't use it too long. Now, Mike does not mention any of this stuff on his website. I'm mentioning it. Wonderful, huh? Anyway, as far as this device actually has been used experimentally in China against cancerous tumors, but it also could be used against infections. If you have a wound or something like that, it's infected, it can actually be used greatly to destroy those infections. The beauty behind microelectricity, it's not just topical. In other words, say for instance you had a limb that was deeply infected. Yeah, they would give you antibiotics, but you got to remember, this type of current would go right through the limb. If you put it on, say it was on your forearm, and you put one pad on one side and one pad on the other side, you can use both currents. You could try using the ME, the microelectricity, as per the U.S. patent, and then try the DC maybe 12 hours later, whatever. Use both of them. Now, when you're using a DC against, say for instance, an infection that's on a limb, you would want to switch the pads from positive to negative every 5 minutes and continue this on for maybe 30 minutes to an hour max. Now, if you're using this unit against a cancerous tumor, you'd use the positive side, the red clip, onto the small pad, and the black clip, the negative side, onto the opposite side of the torso or the body with the big pad. And you would just leave it that way. You would not reverse the polarity. And I hope I'm not being confusing about this, because I'm trying to nail this pretty quickly in one video. Now, there's also something else I'm going to talk about. It's herpes. Herpes virus, they say, is incurable. Maybe it is, but I want to tell you experimental usage that's been used. And it's using actually the DC voltage. Now, You can use plain DC voltage from like 3 to 5 volts, or this unit can actually function as that because it goes up. It's in that range. When you put this on DC, you can get it up to over 3 volts, no problem. You would put one side of the electrode where the herpes outbreak was. And this is actually talking for genital herpes and everything. You would put it one side where the genital herpes outbreak was, on this right next to the site, and the other electrode goes onto the base of the spine. The reason herpes is very difficult to treat is because it retreats as soon as they put something that destroys the virus where the outbreak was. It retreats on the nerve ending itself. But if you electrify the entire nerve ending, the nerve ending goes back to the base of the spine. What happens is you zap the virus. You find, in other words, it can't hide. It's trying to run back and retreat back into the nerve, and it gets zapped. It's best to do this when it breaks out, so that's when it's telling you it's coming out. Now, it doesn't seem to work every single time, but I've seen enough feedback that it seems to work quite often. Now, obviously the problem to this is, let me put it this way: if you do this enough, it should get knocked out eventually. And some people have claimed that it knocked it out the first time. They never came back. So I don't want to get into references on this garbage, but let me put it this way: you're applying like 3 to 5 volts. It's not gonna kill you. Obviously, it's extremely low voltage, and the cost is minimal. Now, because you don't even need to buy this unit, you can use like a 6-volt battery with a potentiometer, where you can turn down the voltage a little bit, which is a little device you get from Radio Shack for like a few dollars, so you can turn down the voltage a little bit. But just saying, that's another use for this device also, because this device, I have one of these, and I usually use the mini one that just has the Beck current on it, and I use it every day for a couple hours or more. And I don't actually use this one all the time, but this is one of the ones actually I have too, and I've had no problems with his products at all. But there's actually a number of uses that you can use this same device for. This is probably, if you buy one, this is probably the best one to get. And you buy it with the rechargeable batteries, and you can charge them up. Now, if you charge up this unit, you would leave the unit in the off position and charge the batteries. You leave the AC adapter plugged in for a few hours or so, and then it would be charged up for quite some time. And then you would not leave it plugged in. It's kind of like a manual charger. But, whatever what person wants to do. But I would actually recommend that product more than any of them. And again, I wanted to point out that's an actual patent. There's an actual patent out here. This is the patent. And when you grant a patent, you usually have to prove that it works in some fashion. It's not gobbledygook. Now, the other thing I was talking about was the treatment of oral maladies using direct current electricity, which is a patent application. In other words, it's not proven yet. I don't think the patent's out there yet. I couldn't find it, but I know this has been going on for a number of years. And sometimes just using plain old DC electricity between 3 and 5 volts works wonders in clobbering infections. They used to do this at the turn of the century. Then it was deemed quackery. But, I mean, you can't say it's quackery because it's not quackery. The problem is that it replaces a lot of stuff. Look at what electricity costs doing something like this, 3 to 5 volts. It's practically nothing. It's practically nothing. But, my advice to the medical community is, they're so hell-bent on keeping a status quo. They're worse than religious kooks. It's almost like they got a dogma and they have to stick with it because that's their revenue stream. Well, my attitude is that you need to push the envelope a lot higher. There's always more business out there. The way to do that is to just extend life. Why not raise the bar to make people live at least 1,000 years old and be like brand new the whole time, or maybe more. Because theoretically, people could actually live forever in this body, you know. So, but I'm kind of leaving myself open to a major attack here with this garbage. But I can actually get into a hell of a lot more involving this, and you'd be quite surprised.